And we begin with Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, where for the first time, Kremlin officials are admitting heavy military losses. President Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, said in an interview with Sky News on Wednesday that Russia has suffered, quote, significant losses and that the deaths were, quote, a huge tragedy for us. It's unknown just how many troop casualties there are within the Russian military. Ukraine has put the number at close to 20,000, while the U.S. estimates between 7,000 and 15,000. Peskov did say that Moscow hopes to achieve its military goals in the coming days. That goal no longer includes taking Kyiv and other cities to the north. There's been a near total withdrawal from the region by Russian armed forces in order to focus on areas in eastern Ukraine in fighting that observers fear could be even more intense than what has been seen in these first 44 days of the war. In a vote before the United Nations General Assembly, Russia was suspended from the body's Human Rights Council over its actions in Ukraine. The vote was 93 in favor of suspension, and while it succeeded in removing Russia from the panel, it also showed that there are large swaths of the world still not behind the West's retaliatory actions. 24 countries voted against suspension, 58 abstained from the vote. The U.S. announced a new round of sanctions against Russia, cutting off trade and access to the U.S. financial system for the country's largest shipbuilding and mining firms. So far, the U.S. sanctions regime, while proving very costly for ordinary Russians, is not inflicting the sort of broad damage to Putin's inner circle and oligarchs to discourage further war making. Meanwhile, NBC News has a report out this week describing the tactics of U.S. intel agencies in this war. Officials tell the news outlet that the government is regularly declassifying intelligence that is not confirmed solely to disrupt Putin's war plans. Claims made by Washington that Russia was about to use chemical weapons in Ukraine and that China was considering sending military assistance to Moscow to fight the war are both examples of intelligence that wasn't exactly rock solid, but still provided anyway. As NBC News reports, quote, multiple U.S. officials acknowledge that the U.S. has used information as a weapon even when confidence in the accuracy of the information wasn't high. Sometimes it has used low confidence intelligence for deterrent effect, as with the chemical agents, and other times, as an official put it, the U.S. is trying to just get inside Putin's head. Another official said the tactics has its danger. One of them is that getting something clearly wrong would be extremely damaging to U.S. credibility and play into Moscow's hands. So U.S. spies may have been correct about the Russian invasion in the first place, something I personally was very skeptical of and got wrong. But it appears the U.S. got it right by accident. So I'll take the L on this one, but only with an asterisk, because skepticism of U.S. intelligence claims remains the best approach, especially during this propaganda war. Moving to Capitol Hill now, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was promoted on Tuesday to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, soon to be the 116th person to ever sit on the Supreme Court. She will replace the retiring Justice Stephen Breyer this summer. Jackson's nomination was approved in a Senate vote that saw 3 Republicans joining with every single Democrat in support. Having the first ever Black woman and former public defender to sit on the high court is something that is long overdue. It's genuinely a good thing her nomination was able to overcome the vile and racist attacks against her in reactionary media and among members of the Republican Party. And look, there could have been a lot worse nominees than Jackson to take over Breyer's seat. I mean, she's way better than someone like Merrick Garland, right? And it's hard to think of a better nominee who could have gotten the support of the de facto leader of the Democratic Party, Joe Manchin. But ideology also matters, and it's unclear just how much rigor Jackson would defend the sort of rapid expansions of the social safety net and restructuring of our economy necessary to survive global warming. Of course, any optimism that we ever get to a point where Congress is actually doing stuff like that is probably just the steroids talking. Jackson also had the endorsement of most major police organizations, suggesting she may not be a reliable ally on major cases she hears on police abuse. And even if a Justice Jackson ends up advocating for the sort of anti-capitalist, anti-police upheavals needed to improve our country, the other 6 justices on the court won't. Jackson will be joining the most powerless faction in the U.S. government, the liberal bloc of the Supreme Court. The nomination both means a lot and means absolutely nothing at all. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.